Hello all, welcome back. This is part 2 of our SDS Q135 teardown video. In this case, it's now actually the rebuild video. So if you have not seen the first part of the video, you can go check that out. It's the SDS Q135 teardown. And I went through it, got it all torn down, kind of showed you what was going on with it. We had a little bit of a sand issue. I explained that these pumps do fail because of sand that gets in it. This is not the same diaphragm from it, but it's this. You can see here, this hole is a bit more exaggerated, and this is due to just basically sand that gets trapped underneath the pistons. So it's the most common failure with these pumps is those diaphragms just do get worn out. But today I'm going to show you how to rebuild the pump and get it back into working order and how to kind of do it correctly. I want to go through, explain the method, the process, and what I'm doing to ensure that our pump does not fail prematurely. You will need a few things. You're definitely going to want to have your tools ready. You're going to need an inch-pound torque wrench. You will need your, we've got a 1/8 Allen key, an Allen key, I guess is what you call this, an Allen wrench bit, and then we got a 532 Allen bit, and then we got I do have a 1/8 Allen, and then I've got, of course, my little impact, and then I've got this is my silicone, and this is a marine grade non-gassing silicone, and it's important that it's non-gassing because the gassing can affect the O-rings and the diaphragms in these pumps. So you definitely want a non-gassing silicone that is a marine grade. In this case, Dowsol 3145 RTV works great. It is a bit expensive, however, but for the cost, it's worth it. We don't want our pump to be failing. I have here my repair kit. So all the kits are pretty much the same except for the cam, which the cam I did have prior, a Q135 cam, but I've swapped it out. We're going to actually use a 128 cam. So with that said, let's get started. First things we're going to do is we want to make sure before our cam is put on, we want to make sure this has got plenty of anti-seize on it. This shaft, if the pump ever leaks and you get water down in here, this will corrode and your cam will not be able to come off your shaft. And so we don't want that. So I always put anti-seize on it. Next, we're going to actually hold down the cam. Make sure it's pressed all the way down. And we're just going to cinch this right on in and set it in place. Now, I don't know if you noticed, I did not mention that the shaft on the motor has a flat surface. That flat surface is what we're putting our set screw into. So we want to make sure it's kind of turned towards that. In this case, I had already had it preset. Once that's on, we will need to take our motor adapter here. I'm just going to flip it upside down. And then let's go ahead and open up our repair kit. We'll get all our stuff out of here. And so we have in our repair kits, we have our cover sheet, which basically shows all the parts listed that should be in our kit. And we also have our disassembly and reassembly instructions, which I'm just going to set that aside, being that I've pretty much got those all memorized. So we're going to kind of separate this out. We got our diaphragm, our check valve assembly, we have our housing O-rings, we have our outer piston. My outer piston's going to go right in here. We have a relief valve, we've got our check valve O-ring, we have our 4 pistons, we got our 4 discharge head screws here, We have our 4 motor adapter screws, the black screws for motor adapter. We have 2 in-cap screws with their washers and O-rings. We got 4 washers for the discharge. And then we've got our cable guard screws and relief valve screws right here. And then we got our piston screws right there. And the set screw, which goes into the back of the end cap. I've actually already got one in here already, which I will not need, so I'm just gonna set that one aside. So with our outer piston, we've got it faced up, bevel side. It's gonna go towards the top. I'm just gonna hold it in there with a finger, and we're gonna put it over, just like that. Next, we will take our motor adapter screws, and I'm going to just put a little bit of silicone around the top. Let's clean off the old silicone here. I got a little booger of silicone. We don't want those little boogers. Squeeze a little bit out and get that out of there. So I'll put just a little bit of silicone around the edge of the motor adapter screws. That should the water bypass the diaphragm, get around. It may try to get down through these motor adapter screws. If it's already to that point, most likely it's already going to be getting past the diaphragm and going down through the much larger holes. But this is just a little bit of extra precaution to maybe where the water doesn't get that far. Maybe it can last a bit longer. It's just a small little thing, just a little bit of silicone. We'll put that in, and we will take our 532 hex bit, and we're gonna just kind of zip those down. Now I do rock it a little bit because the motor is staged with each 4 holes on the sides. So I just want those screws to kind of be able to drop down, and it kind of self-aligns. Once I've got it, then I can go ahead and zip it down. Now I'm not going all the way, I'm just starting it to make sure they're started. And then once they're all started, I'll work in reverse. And there, it's nice and tight. We'll go ahead and just snug it. I've got this set to 55 inch-pounds. There we go, 55 inch-pounds is set. Okay, next we're gonna take our diaphragm, make sure it's good and clean. I do have an air hose here that I do blow off just to get the extra dust off of it. I don't want any dust on there. So sorry about the shakiness of the camera, but I kind of stand up to try to get my lips lined up. Now you see we have this underside here, this lip that kind of protrudes out. That lip needs to sink down into each groove of the piston, or the outer piston. So we want it lined up to where we can have it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually make sure it snugs in there, and should be fine. Next, we're going to take these pistons. Now these pistons can have a little bit of oil on them, and we don't want that oil. The oil tends to attract a lot of dirt, and sometimes there'll even be metal shavings. So I'm going to clean off these pistons, and I do that with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. The rubbing alcohol is just to kind of help take off that grease, make sure I don't have any little shavings. And I'm just going to pinch it, and I'm going to rotate around. Now I'm pinching with my thumb and forefinger as I rotate around. This also allows me to fill this little lip. And if I have a lip that's gouged, then the piston's probably not going to be good. And so I'm filling it with my thumbnail as I go around rotating. And I don't feel any gouges in my piston lip, so that's a good sign. This one's also good. So yeah, I'm just cleaning and filling that lip, making sure there's no gouges that my thumbnail catches. If my thumbnail catches a gouge, that gouge can leave a space for our water to bypass. We definitely don't want water bypassing our pistons. Okay, these all feel really good, and that's how it should be, as these are all brand new pistons. So once we got them cleaned off, next I'm going to take my diaphragm and I'm going to make sure that lip, the underside lip here, this little lip, I'm making sure it's seated fully in the piston, or the outer piston, excuse me. It's seated, and I'm holding it down just with 2 fingers to kind of secure it. And then I'm going to take my piston, and it's got that hex shape. I look down in here, and I'm looking at the hex shape, and I try to line it up as best I can before I press it down in. Now, once I've got it pressed in, that causes that underside lip to kind of squeeze out and tighten up against the outer piston. Now, it's important that we do this in this way, because if you just take your diaphragm and you push your pistons in, and then you try to set your diaphragm on your outer piston, you end up squashing that little underside lip, this little underside lip. We don't want to squash it flat. We actually want to squish it to flare out when we push our piston in to set it tight against its wall. So I work here I go to the opposite side and do the same thing, just holding it down, making sure that lip is down into the piston, outer piston. Take our next piston, same thing. I'm just going to press that in. And if your piston's not going in right away, you don't try to force it in. Just gently rock it a little bit, twist it back and forth, and it should sink right in. But there you go. Once we got it all snugged in and they're fully bottom seated, we want to make sure that they're fully down in and that they are seated into the outer piston. Once we've got that, now we can move on to the next step. And that's going to be, we got to put our piston screws in, and we're going to tighten these pistons down. But once again, make sure your silicone is clean. You don't want any boogers or whatever you want to call those little globs that harden up. We want a good clean silicone going onto our piston screws. Now what I do here is I make a little bead just like that, and I'm going to take my piston screw and press it inside here, and I'm just coating the whole threads, kind of rotate it around. I want to make sure all those threads are coated with some silicone. And then I'm just going to take it up here, and we're going to push it down in there. And we're going to go ahead and just get this one started to hold it in place. Now, if I look down here inside my pistons, they may be a little misaligned with that cam plate. So to line it up, we have our keyhole here on the side that you can take your 1/8 hex wrench and you can rotate by looking down in here to get it lined up. Once it's lined up, you can kind of just take that key, drop it down in, straight on through the piston, on into the cam plate, and now it's holding it steady. We'll take our 1/8 Allen wrench here, or Allen key, Allen bit, what do you call these things? I don't know. I'm not a good cameraman, I apologize. I'm a technician, not a cameraman, but I'm doing this to just kind of show you how I do it and to help you out. So forgive me for the shakiness of the video and for my my inaccurate mumblings of what things are. All right, so I just kind of zipped it down. That's now holding the cam plate all steady. I'll go ahead and put the rest of the piston screws in with silicone. So I get that little bead, not that much right there. Kind of rotate it around, drop that one in, and on to the next. And it's important that we do have those screws well coated with the silicone. We need a good silicone seal on these piston screws. Okay, and there we go. We've got our piston screws set. Now I'm going to torque spec them. And I will need my 1/8. We've got our, excuse me, we have our 1/8 socket hex bit. And once again, it's just 55 inch-pounds. Now, do you have to do 55 inch-pounds? You can actually probably even go 45 inch-pounds. I definitely don't exceed 55 inch-pounds. I am using the max spec on these. So I'm going from one side to the next side and then jumping over, just kind of working in that star-shaped pattern, like when you put a car tire or putting a car tire on. And I'll just go through one more time just to make sure we are at 55 inch-pounds. There we go. And now I can just take a little piece of paper and I'm just going to clean off this excess silicone. And I'm wiping it down. This is also kind of me pushing it down into those grooves to make sure we got a good seal. Now, the silicone does take a good 8 hours for it to cure, so I'm not going to be testing this pump today. I'm actually going to let it sit overnight. I blow off any other stuff that might have accumulated on it. I always want to make sure it's clean and free of dirt and debris. We definitely don't want dirt or debris into our diaphragm area. Next, I'm just kind of taking my thumb, and I'm pushing the diaphragm down around into its groove. It may not, because of its warping, it may not want to stay, but I'm just wanting to make sure it's snug and that all my little holes are going to be lined up for our next part. All right, so we've got our pistons set. We set the piston screws with silicone. This is all sealed up, and it's going to wait 24 hours before we do any pump testing, but we can go ahead and put the discharge head on. So we've got our discharge head here, and we have our relief valve. Now our relief valve should have this little O-ring on there. We want to make sure that O-ring stays on there. I do pull it back a little bit like this so that it rolls when I push it in. And this can be a little tight. But there we go. Once we got it pushed in, should sink down in there. This is a very tight fitting relief valve. It's I'm just gonna take usually have a little rubber mallet, but I'm gonna just use the back end of my drill here. That is really tight. If it's this tight, you can take this and just kind of sand it a little bit. I'm just gonna move it back over here. I got a little rubber or a little mallet here. There we go. Okay, so I've got it seated in there. Once we've got it seated, we can go ahead and take a Phillips bit here. I've got a Phillips bit, and I'm going to just put my set screws in. These are little Phillips screws that are to hold that relief valve in place. So there's our relief valve. It's secured. Next, we take our suction screen, and I put the weld seam in between where the cable guard's going to go. That way the cable guard kind of hides the weld seam. we go. Okay, so there's our weld seam. Next, we're going to take our check valve, and we have our O-ring here. Now, you can wet this O-ring with some water, or if you take just a little bit of Vaseline or some kind of food safe grease, you can just put a little bit and you can kind of lubricate that O-ring. Lubricating this O-ring is so that it does not pinch when I go to set my check valve. So once I've got that O-ring lubricated, I'm just going to slide it right there into that groove of the relief valve, or the check valve, excuse me. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to just place it over, and that O-ring is going to seal up right here on this lip of our discharge head. So I just put it on there straight and put my weight on it right there in the center and press down, and it should snug nice into place. I look inside here to see if I have any pinching of that O-ring. I can feel around, and I don't feel that O-ring pinching. It's not protruding out, so we've got a good seat, and that's what we want with that. So there's our discharge head assembly. Next, we're gonna just line up our diaphragm with the mating grooves in our check valve. And you can just kind of set it on top, kind of rotate it around. If it doesn't rotate, you probably got it snug. That's where it should be. And now we'll place our washers onto our discharge head screws. And I am going to take a little bit of anti-seize and just put a little bit on the ends of our screws. This is to help our screws when they're drilling into this motor adapter, because it's stainless going into stainless. There is the risk of the screws galling, and it's always important to check your screws to make sure you don't have any stuff on them other than the anti-seize. The anti-seize will help it not gall. And so I put those on. Next, I'm going to take my 532 and I'm just going to start each one. Once it's started, it tells me they're all aligned, and then I can go ahead and send it the rest of the way down. 532 hex, and now it's 55 inch-pounds once more. And I just go through in that opposite pattern from one side to the next. So there we go. It's all at 55. Now, because I've tightened it down once, a lot of times when I tighten down one side, the other sides will start to loosen, so I'll go back through once more and make sure that they are all at 55. There you go. So that is now set. This is our first part. We'll turn it over. Now, I did forget to mention, I have this build plate that I've been working on. This build plate, it's just a metal aluminum plate with holes drilled out. I've got these little pegs for a different style of pump. That's for the duplex, but you don't have to have one of these. You can just use a board and drill some holes out to steady it up. But next, we're going to go ahead and put our housing O-rings on. We're going to just rotate them down until they fit there in that groove. There we go. We got two housing O-rings there. We can take the other two housing O-rings. They're going to go onto our end cap. Just like that. Next, my housing. I forgot to grab my housing. I actually have a stack of them over here. So here we got a housing that's already been cleaned up, ready to go. And with the housing, so there's this little beveled lip right here, this small little beveled lip. I want to make sure it's clean and free of dirt. But then I take my little bit of grease, and once again, this is just a food safe grease. You can use Vaseline. I would not recommend using like a food oil, like a frying oil, because that stuff, when it gets hot and cooking and gets old, it gets gummy, and so it's harder to remove. So Vaseline is probably your best bet. This is actually a little mineral oil. Mineral oil works great. You can use that. But I'm just going through, putting a little bit of on my finger, and I'm just coating this little beveled edge going around. This will actually help me slide past these O-rings when I go to place this housing on. So once I've got that inside lubricated, I'm gonna go ahead and I want to take note of where my cable guard's gonna go. Any blemishes in my housing, I've got some old writing on this that I'm gonna take off here in a second. But I just slide that on and I just press it down, and it slips right over the top of that. Next, we're gonna take our wires here. I'm gonna connect my black to my black and the red to red. And once again, we're going to make sure our wires, gets covered by the cable guard. We're going to make sure it lines up. We're going to make sure we don't pinch these wires in here. If we pinch these wires, we can have a short, and we don't want that. So I'll twist them up kind of in a ball, in a bundle, and I'll push them back towards the middle and away from these two motor nuts right in here. So I'm just going to line that up right there. And now I'm going to look down inside these holes, and I've got the light. I can actually look and see where my motor nut is. If you're having trouble seeing what's down in there, you can just take your Allen key, you can drop it right down in there, feel around to where you got your motor nut, and then you can just press it on. And there we go. Once it's pressed down in, we can now take our end cap screws here. And once again, I'm going to take a bit of silicone. I'm going to get about a pea size drop, a little small pea. And I'm just going to put a little bit around the base of that. So I've got a little black speck of something in there. I don't want that in there. That's why it's always good to have a clean area, but there's that little bit of black. Looks like a piece of black Rayton shaving. I'm gonna take that little bit out. Don't want that interfering with our silicone. We'll drop this in. Now, I should probably mention that I pre-lubricated the motor nut, but if you have not done that, you can take a little bit of anti-seize and put it on the end of your screw there. I'm going to drop that down in. We got our impact here. Just going to get it started. Just starting it, not taking it down all the way. Then we'll move on to our next screw here. And the same thing. And there we go. Now we take them down all the way. Now, with the metal end cap screws, you can go ahead and just tighten down 55 inch-pounds again. There you go. So we've got that set to 55 inch-pounds. Lay this on its side. I'm going to go ahead and label this now so I don't forget. But I like to put the date and what it is. So we have a 128. This is a rebuild. I like to put my date code, 16th week of 2025. This is number 1. Now I'm also going to take a bit of heat shrink. This is not necessary, but I like to add a little bit of heat shrink over the wires right here. And this heat shrink is, it's kind of to protect the wires a little bit from where the cable guard kind of cinches it down. So I've got this, the welding seam right here. I'm gonna just place the heat shrink right over that welding seam. And we'll go ahead and heat it up. And once again, you don't have to have this heat shrink. It's just a little extra protection. You could put a little piece of electrical tape or whatever you want. You could take some electrical tape and put it over the weld seam. But when your pump is working down in the well, it kicks on. It can have a bit of vibration. And if this is just sitting here vibrating away, sometimes this weld seam can just chew right into the wires, and pretty soon you have a short from just that. The wires vibrating and wearing through their protective layer. So yeah, that's why I put the heat shrink on. Next, I pull the wires tight, get them nice and straight. We've got our cable guard, it's got the little crook in it. And I'll pull the wires straight. We'll place the cable guard directly over the top of those wires, get them, make sure they're flat, make sure the wires are flat and centered. And I'm just gonna hold it down with this hand. And we're gonna start one screw here. I guess I probably need to change out my bit first. Okay, so next, see if I can do this. I've got the camera right in my face, so it's kind of hard for me to see. And once again, I apologize for the wiggling, but we want these screws to not gall. We want to go slow, just slow and easy to where it starts. Once again, I'm just starting the screws. I'm not cinching them all the way down just yet. I want some wiggle room. It makes it easier to put the other screws in. And because sometimes these holes where the screws are supposed to go can be a little offset. So in this case, you can kind of see how the hole doesn't quite line up right there. I'm gonna zoom in. See how my hole doesn't quite line up? It's offset. It's really tight, and that's why I leave my screws loose, so I can actually grab and pull. And what I'm doing is I'm just squeezing my hand and using the palm to pull that over. I'll take that screw, put it in, and I'm gonna just kind of angle it to where I can grab it and then kind of pry it over and start it. Just like that to get it started. And then we got our last one, and same thing. I'm gonna pull to where I can line up those holes, get it started, but because this is the last one, we'll cinch it down, and then we'll go back through and cinch them all down. And as you can see, that one kind of, because it was so far apart, it actually did kind of split my cable guard a little bit. That's all right, it's not gonna affect the operation of the pump. There we have it. That is our Q128 fully rebuilt. It is ready now to, well, in this case, I guess it's not ready because I got to let the glue cure. But yeah, let it sit for 24 hours. Let that silicone get all cured in there. But once it's cured, you can now put your pipe fitting in. You can put your eye bolt in, and it's ready to be tested or dropped down in a well. So there you have it. I hope this answered some questions. I hope it all made sense. Once again, I apologize. I'm not much of a camera guy. I am an actual pump technician. I do these. I mean, this is what I do pretty much all day, every day. I just build these pumps. I take them apart. As you can see here behind me, I have all these pumps ready to go. I am the assembly line here at Sun Pumps. And yeah, we're constantly just building these pumps. They're a great pump. They work great out in remote areas, running on just solar power. Very handy. Um, but as it goes, because they're a diaphragm pump, they do wear out and they do need maintenance. And so that's why I made this video, is to just kind of help you out. If you want to be able to rebuild these yourself, you can buy the kits from us. You can go to sunpumps.com. We've got all sorts of pumps there. You can call up our sales guys. They can help you find out what you need. And yeah, so I hope this video helps. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.